Jacob's eyes flew open. His hand went to his throat. The sound came out of him anyway. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Molly sat up. She stared at her husband. Jacob was sitting upright in the bed, both hands pressed flat against his own chest, his eyes wide with something that had no name yet, something that was still trying to understand itself. The sound had come from him, the sound of a rooster, from a man's throat. But to understand what happened in that bedroom, we must go back to the beginning. The sun had barely cracked the sky over Tinika when Jacob was already awake. He sat at the edge of his compound on a low wooden stool, his elbows resting on his knees, his chin resting on his knuckles. His eyes were fixed on the narrow path that ran past his gate, the same path his wife Molly used every morning when she left the house. He had not slept. The wrapper around his waist was the same one he had worn the night before. There was a cup of cold pap on the ground beside him that he had not touched. A fly circled the rim of it, landed, circled again. Jacob did not notice. His eyes were on the path. He was a broad-shouldered man, Jacob, the kind of man whose presence filled a room before he opened his mouth. His jaw was always set, always tight, like a man permanently bracing for something. The other men in Tinika respected him. Some of them feared him a little. He farmed well, he paid his debts, he kept his compound clean. But there was something behind his eyes that had always made the older women of the village press their lips together when they spoke of him. "That one," old Mama Reese had once said, stirring her pot without looking up. "That one holds things too tight. A man who holds a bird too tight does not keep the bird. He kills it." Nobody had told Jacob this. Or perhaps they had, and he had not heard it. Molly was the kind of woman who made a room feel warmer simply by being in it. She was not loud. She was not the sort of woman who announced herself, but there was something about the way she moved. Unhurried, like water finding its own level, that drew the eye without demanding it. She swept the compound that morning the way she swept it every morning, the short broom scratching a soft rhythm against the packed earth. Her yellow wrapper was tied high on her chest. Her feet were bare. She hummed something without words, just a sound, the kind of sound a person makes when their mind is somewhere pleasant. Jacob watched her from his stool, his jaw tightened. She had gone out yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. To the market, she said. To visit Auntie Beezy, she said. To collect fabric from the seamstress, she said. Jacob's fingers curled around his own knee. Always somewhere to go, he thought. Always somewhere that is not here. He had never caught her doing anything. He had never seen anything with his own eyes. But the thing that lived in his chest, that hot, restless, gnawing thing, did not need evidence. It fed on absence. It fed on the sound of her footsteps, leaving. It fed on the way she sometimes smiled at nothing when she came back home, like she was carrying a secret warmth inside her that had nothing to do with him. He watched her sweep. She did not look up. There was a man at the edge of Tinika who people visited when ordinary solutions had run out. His name was never spoken loudly. You did not call his name in the open air. You went to him the way you went to a healer, quietly, in the early morning before the village fully woke. Jacob had been thinking about it for 3 weeks. He told himself he was not going to do it. He told himself again the following week. On the 3rd week, he found himself standing at the man's door before he had consciously decided to walk there. The door opened before he knocked a 2nd time. The old man looked at Jacob the way a person looks at a wound they have seen many times before. Not with surprise, not with judgment, just with the quiet recognition of someone who knows exactly what they are dealing with. "Come in," he said. The room smelled of dried bark and something sharper underneath. Something that made the back of Jacob's throat tighten. Bundles of herbs hung from the low ceiling. A clay pot sat in the corner with a cloth tied over its mouth. The floor was swept clean. Jacob sat on the stool the old man pointed to. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, "I want the one that crows." The old man was quiet. "You are sure?" he said finally. Jacob's jaw was set. "I am sure." "That one does not forgive," the old man said. He was not trying to stop Jacob. He was simply stating a fact the way a man states that fire is hot. Once it is placed, it does not ask questions. It does not wait for proof. It only waits for the act. "Good," Jacob said. The old man looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned to his shelf and gave Jacob the one that crows. Kola had been Jacob's friend since they were boys who stole mangoes from the same tree. He was a different kind of man from Jacob, loose-limbed, easy-laughing, the sort of man who could diffuse a quarrel with a single well-placed joke. But when Jacob told him what he had done, Kola did not laugh. He set down his cup of palm wine very slowly. "Jacob," he said. "Don't," Jacob said. "Jacob, listen to me. I said don't." Kola looked at his friend, at the set of his jaw, at the way his hands were resting on his thighs, perfectly still the way hands are still when a man is working very hard to keep them that way. "Have you seen anything?" Kola asked quietly. "With your own eyes. Have you seen anything?" Jacob said nothing. "Then what are you doing?" Kola's voice was low, careful, the way you speak to a man standing too close to the edge of something. "You are placing a death trap on your own wife based on what? She goes to the market. She visits people. Jacob, women leave the house. That is not—" "You don't know what I know," Jacob said. "What do you know?" Silence. The mango tree dropped a leaf. It spiraled down between them and landed on the ground. "I know how she smiles when she comes back," Jacob said finally. His voice had gone very quiet. "I know that smile is not for me." Kola stared at his friend for a long time. Then he picked up his cup of palm wine and looked away, because there was nothing left to say to a man who had already decided that his feelings were the same thing as facts. He did it on a night when the moon was hidden. The old man had told him how. A thread, thin as a whisper, laid across the threshold of the bedroom doorway. Molly would step over it in the morning without knowing. She would carry it with her everywhere she went, invisible as breath, deadly as a blade. Jacob knelt at the threshold. His hands did not shake. He told himself this was love. He told himself that a man who did not protect what was his was not a man at all. He told himself that if Molly was innocent, nothing would happen. The Magun would simply sit in her body like a sleeping dog, harmless, waiting for a betrayal that would never come. He told himself this. He laid the thread. He stood up. He went to bed. Beside him, Molly slept on her side, her breathing slow and even. Jacob lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. He did not sleep for a long time. Day 1. Molly stepped over the threshold in the morning, her market basket on her arm, her yellow wrapper bright in the early sun. She called back into the compound. "I am going. I will return before evening." And her voice was the same voice it always was. Warm, unhurried. Jacob stood in the shadow of the doorway and watched her go. His chest was a closed fist. Day 2. She came back with fresh tomatoes and a small piece of Ankara fabric she had found at a good price. She held it up to show him, her face bright with the small pleasure of a good bargain. "See, I got it for half the price. The woman liked my face." Jacob looked at the fabric. "Good," he said. He went back inside. Day 3. She left again, came back again, laughed with the neighbor's wife over the fence about something Jacob could not hear. Her laugh was full and unguarded, the laugh of a woman with nothing to hide, or the laugh of a woman who had learned to hide things very well. Jacob could no longer tell the difference. Day 4. Molly left in the morning as usual. She did not come back until late. When she finally walked through the gate, something was different. Jacob saw it immediately, the way she moved, not her usual unhurried flow. She was walking quickly, almost stumbling, her wrapper slightly askew, her head wrap pushed back on her head. Her eyes were wide, and she kept glancing behind her even after she was inside the compound. Jacob stepped forward. "What happened to you?" Molly looked at him. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across her face. The beginning of a story, the opening of a door. Then she looked at his eyes. at the tightness in his jaw, at the way his arms were already crossing over his chest. She closed the door. "Nothing," she said. "I walked too fast. I am tired." She went inside. Jacob stood in the compound and watched the space where she had been. What had happened on the fourth day was this. Molly had been on the path that ran along the back of the market, the shortcut she always took when the main road was too crowded. When she heard it, not footsteps, not a voice, a sound, low and guttural and wrong, like something that had once been human and had forgotten how. She turned. The man was perhaps 30 paces behind her. He was barefoot, his eyes fixed on her with the blank, burning focus of someone whose mind had long since left the building it used to live in. His hair was matted. His feet were cracked and grey with dust. He was moving toward her. Molly stood very still for one heartbeat. Then she ran. She ran the way she had not run since she was a child. Not the polite, dignified trot of a woman who does not want to cause a scene, but a full, desperate, arms-pumping, lungs-burning sprint. Her market basket flew off her arm somewhere on the path. Her left sandal came off. She did not stop for either of them. The man gave chase with a sound that was not quite a shout and not quite a howl. Something between the two that scraped the inside of her ears. She ran until she reached the main road where there were people, and she did not stop until she was in the middle of a crowd of market women who looked at her. Wild-eyed, one sandal missing, chest heaving. With the particular alarm of women who recognize a woman who has just escaped something. "Madman," she gasped. "Back path." The women clucked and fussed, and one of them gave her water, and another retrieved her sandal from a boy who had found it on the path. Molly sat on an upturned crate and waited for her heartbeat to return to something normal. She thought about telling Jacob. She thought about his face, the way his eyes would go flat and calculating. The questions that would follow: why were you on that path? Who else uses that path? Why were you coming back so late? The way a story about a madman would somehow, in Jacob's hands, become a story about her. She picked up her remaining sandal. She went home. She said nothing. On the fifth day, Molly did not go out. She sat in the compound on a low stool, shelling beans into a clay bowl, her movements slow and mechanical. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back on that path. Every time she heard a sound from the street, her hands went still. She did not go to the market. She did not visit Auntie Bisi. She did not go anywhere. Jacob watched her from across the compound. He watched her shell the beans. He watched her stare at nothing. He watched the way she flinched at the sound of a dog barking somewhere down the road. And in the locked, airless room of his own mind, Jacob drew a conclusion. The rival is dead, he thought. The Magun had been placed since, which meant that by now, any man who had been with Molly would have already died. And Molly knew. She could feel the absence of him. That was why she sat there like that, staring at nothing, her hands going through the motions of shelling beans, while her mind was somewhere else entirely. She was mourning. Jacob's jaw tightened until it ached. He went inside. On the sixth night, Jacob came to his wife. He came to her the way a man comes to something he believes he has reclaimed, with a quiet, possessive certainty, a settling of accounts. He did not speak much. He did not need to. Molly lay still in the darkness and let him come to her, the way she had learned to let many things happen in this marriage, with a stillness that was not peace, but had learned to wear peace's face. The night sounds of Tinika moved around them. A cricket, the distant bark of a dog, the soft percussion of wind in the banana leaves outside the window. Afterward, Jacob lay on his back. He felt for the first time in weeks something loosen in his chest. It is done, he thought. She is mine again. He closed his eyes. And then, from somewhere deep in his own chest, from a place he had no name for and no control over, something rose. It rose the way a sound rises in a man's throat before he knows it is coming. Jacob's eyes flew open. His hand went to his throat. The sound came out of him anyway. Cock-a-doodle-doo? Molly sat up. She stared at her husband. Jacob was sitting upright in the bed, both hands pressed flat against his own chest, his eyes wide with something that had no name yet, something that was still trying to understand itself. The sound had come from him, the sound of a rooster, from a man's throat. In the silence that followed, the cricket outside the window continued its song, indifferent and steady, as if nothing had happened at all. Jacob's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then it came again. Cock-a-doodle-doo, louder this time, fuller. The sound of it filled the room and spilled out through the window into the night air of Tinika, and somewhere down the road a real rooster answered it, confused and indignant. Molly pressed herself against the wall. Her eyes were fixed on her husband's face. Jacob looked at his hands. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at Molly. And in his eyes, in the space behind the shock, behind the confusion, something was beginning to move. Something slow and terrible and inevitable, like a man watching a wall he built himself begin to fall. He lay back slowly like a man lowering himself into water. His breathing had changed. It was not the breathing of sleep. It was the breathing of a man whose body was beginning to understand something his mind was still catching up to. "Molly," he said. His voice was different. The hardness was gone from it. What was left was something she had not heard from him in so long that it took her a moment to recognize it. It was just his voice, just the man. "Molly, I have to tell you something." She did not move. She sat with her back against the wall, her knees drawn up, her eyes on his face. "I put Magun on you," he said. The cricket outside stopped. Or perhaps it did not stop. Perhaps Molly simply stopped hearing it. "I put it on the threshold," Jacob continued. His voice was very quiet now, very careful, like a man handling something fragile. "I was sure. I told myself you were cheating." He stopped, swallowed. "I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I knew it even when I was doing it. Somewhere inside me I knew, but He stopped again. His hand moved across the mat toward hers. She did not take it. "I was so afraid of losing you," he said, "that I became the thing that deserved to lose you." The room was very still. Outside, the real rooster crowed once, a clean, ordinary sound, and then was quiet. "Forgive me," Jacob said. His voice had gone to almost nothing now. "Molly, please, forgive me." Cock-a-doodle-doo, the third time. The sound of it was different from the first two, quieter, thinner, like something running out. Jacob's hands dropped, the tightness in his jaw, the tightness that had lived there for years, that had been there so long Molly had forgotten what his face looked like without it, was gone. His chest rose once, fell, did not rise again. His face, for the first time in as long as she could remember, was simply open. Molly looked at her husband's face, at the open, undone thing it had become, at the man underneath, all the years of tightness and suspicion and locked doors. The man she had married, the man she had believed was still in there somewhere. The man she had stopped looking for because looking had become too painful. He was there. He had always been there. He had just buried himself under so much fear that neither of them could find him. A tear moved down her cheek. She did not wipe it. "Jacob! Jacob! Jacob! Somebody! Please help!" she said. But his eyes had closed forever, to open no more. By the time the first light touched the rooftops of Tinika, the news had already begun to move through the village the way news always moves in a small place, quietly at first, then all at once. Kola heard it from the man who lived 2 compounds away. He sat down on the ground where he was standing and did not get up for a long time. Old Mama Risi heard it while she was lighting her morning fire. She sat down looking at her matches. She looked at the flame for a moment. Then she said very quietly, to no one in particular, "Magun is a self-inflicted snare." She picked up her matches and went back to tending to her fire. Molly sat in the compound on the same low stool where she had shelled beans the day before. The clay bowl was still there. A few beans remained in it, the ones she had not finished. She sat with her hands in her lap and her face turned toward the gate she walked through every morning, the gate Jacob had watched her walk through, with eyes full of a story he had written entirely by himself. A story in which she was the villain and he was the wronged man. A story that had not one true word in it. She thought about the madman on the path. She thought about the sandal she had lost and the market women who had given her water. She thought about all the things she had not said and all the things Jacob had not asked, and the vast, silent distance between two people who lived in the same house and slept in the same bed and had somehow, without either of them fully noticing, stopped being able to reach each other. She thought about his voice in the darkness. I was so afraid of losing you that I became the thing that deserved to lose you. A child ran past the gate, laughing at something. The sound of it was bright and clean and completely indifferent to everything that had happened in this compound. Molly looked at the beans in the bowl. She picked up the bowl. She began to shell the remaining beans. Her hands were steady. In the village of Tinika, they said the gods had two eyes. One eye watched the wicked, the other watched the fool. Jacob was not a wicked man. He was a man who loved something so desperately that he crushed it in his hands trying to hold it. A man who mistook his own fear for wisdom. A man who built a trap for a ghost and walked into it himself. The Magun did not lie. It did not make mistakes. It did not punish the innocent. It only punished the one who set it. Magun. Idakun afawofa Ida. Magun is a self-inflicted snare. Let those who have ears hear. Moral of the story. Magun is a self-inflicted snare. Fear of losing someone can make you the reason you lose them. The tale of Jacob and Molly reminds us of the destructive power of jealousy and mistrust. When we allow insecurity and suspicion to guide our actions, we not only hurt the people we love, but also damage ourselves. True love is built on trust, communication, and understanding. Without these, even the strongest relationships can crumble. Jacob's downfall was his inability to trust and listen, and it cost him everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more captivating tales that teach important life lessons. Share this video with friends and family to spread the message about the dangers of jealousy and the importance of trust. Let's keep learning and growing together. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.